Alright guys, so my name's Cody. I'm here to show you guys how to rebuild a 2000 to 2004 VG33E or ER distributor off of a Nissan Xterra. Should be Pathfinder, Quest, things like that. Basically, as I drop it, I already pre-disassembled this, so it should go a little bit smoother here. There's going to be two screws, one located here and here. That's going to allow you to pull this black shield off. From there, you'll see all the electronics, the sensors. Basically, you just want to unplug your wires like that. That should allow you to get to these screws a little easier. So you'll just unscrew it there, unscrew it here, pull these two screws out. There's one, there's two. This one down the center here, you can kind of maybe see it in there, kind of hard to show. It can be a bear. What I recommend is using an impact driver. I bought this one here off of or from Napa for about $16. And basically you strike it with the hammer, it helps rotate. It's kind of like an impact gun, but screwdriver form factor. That'll loosen this screw up enough. I did it with the distributor still in the truck. You just unscrew that out of there. It's still not out. And once it comes free, you can pull the entire top hat, hopefully not lose your trigger wheel here. I don't know exactly what that's called, but it's a trigger wheel. It's got really fine holes all the way around it there. Don't bend this, don't break it. You actually are going to clean it really, really well when you go back in with it. From there, you have this lower part of the top hat, what I call the top hat, and then you can pull this entire sensor out and the gasket all in one piece. Gasket comes out just like so. You can give it a little bit of a clean with some electric parts cleaner. From there, you can undo these two larger screws. Once I get them spun all the way out here, move these. They're kind of long-winded, but you undo these two larger screws. You can now pull the rest of this assembly out. And there's actually another screw up here I didn't undo, so bear with me. Hopefully I don't break it off. There it goes, broke it loose. Undo that screw as well. And now this whole assembly comes out. It's kind of a chunky guy. And that allows you to now get down in here. There's two screws that hold that main bearing together. That bearing is a 6000 series sealed bearing. So it's got a 10mm bore, which is this shaft here. It's got 8mm thick and 26mm wide. But if you go to Napa, you tell them, hey, it's a 6000 series sealed bearing, so it's got sealed shields on either side. They should be able to look it up pretty easily. From there, you throw the screwdriver at the camera, but you undo these two bearings screws here. This one's going to be a little bit of a bear. And they're pretty short, but they should come out pretty easily. These ones aren't open to the environment on the other side, which makes it so they stay relatively clean. Now, you take and just, I recommend using a rubber hammer. I didn't. You give that a few taps. And now, you just kind of keep doing that. Shaft will separate. keep that guy pretty clean because that's got your gear that engages on your cams. Now your bearing is open to the world. Sometimes these get kind of wedged in there and you can't get them out. They do offer a little pry hole right down on the inside. Right here you can see. What I like to do though is just reach through with a screwdriver and give it a couple taps. Should fall right out. That's your bearing. This one here is, let me wipe it off real quick. And you can see it is a 6000 U or DU, which is what this factory bearing is. You can kind of tell it's a little worn in there. I'm gonna pause you, grab the rest of the parts, clean this housing up. You want to clean it up really good. There's some oil and grease and everything inside of it, so bear with me. Alright guys, so I just got back, finished cleaning this housing up. There's some oxidization all the way around. I think the guy that I bought this from had it sitting for a little while, or that's how he got it pulled. So here's the new bearing, 6000. 2RSJ is the part number. It's an SKF bearing from Napa Auto Parts. Cost me about $25. You can typically find them on Amazon a little bit more reasonable than that. As you can see, doesn't have as much free play in it as the old bearing, so a little bit better, a little tighter, a little more lubrication inside there. To go back together, you simply pop it in there. Should pop in fairly easy. Doesn't matter, it's a straight bore bearing. So then you take your two screws that retain it, you put them both inside, one there, one there. You'll screw them in all the way until they seat at the bottom. And just snug them up, don't strip them out. The heads of them are pretty soft. I actually, for the entire cover shroud, I actually broke those two screws off. I could not get them to break free. So before I ship this housing off, either I'll have to buy a new housing and put the new bearing in and all new hardware, or I will have to pull those screws out and get some fresh ones. So the bearing's in there, it's retained, it just holds the outer race of it. You can kind of see it in the sun. The sun's not really the best for doing it out here in the driveway. Next, you're going to flip the housing upside down, and you're going to take your shaft with your gear on it. I cleaned this up as well. It's not perfect, but it will work. You'll have a spring on there. Make sure that is on. And then there's this little clip with a saddle in it. That goes down, and you will see it faces towards the gear, and you will see a roll pin pressed in right about there. You want to make sure it seats all the way over that when you go back in. So you're going to slide it down in here, give it, drive it home, and make sure it is happy and where it needs to be here. I'm going to give this a few light taps with a hammer. Again, I recommend a rubber mallet. I don't happen to have one handy right at the moment, but that'll work. Didn't unseat the bearing, no issues there. Next, you're going to take this big old sensor here. You're going to drop it into place. Make sure you seat that seal there. And then you're going to go ahead and screw these two screws all the way home. Again, being careful not to strip them out, as they are pretty soft. I believe one is a crank position sensor and the other one's kind of the coil. This one I believe is actually the coil, and the other one's the crank position sensor. So run it home. They don't have, I don't believe they have an actual torque spec. They might. I've always just ran them nice and tight. I've rebuilt the one in my truck a handful of times. So next, you are going to take, I guess, our crank position sensor, if you will, and you're gonna drop it in its place here, which I don't seem to have this shaft all the way seated home, so I will have to push it in a little further before I go ahead and install this. Let's pop this back out, take this screw free, flip the housing over. Well, I might have to pull the sensor out again. I'm gonna try it without though. For whatever reason, it's not wanting to seat all the way home. You can there we go, it's starting to go. So now that it's seated all the way home, you'll see that that roll pin sits inside that saddle, spring nice and tight. So now I can go ahead and install the sensor here. Make sure you get this green wire. I don't know if it's green on every single distributor. I've only pulled apart a couple of them now. But you want to make sure it's inside. Go ahead and seat that O-ring, that gasket, I guess you can call it. It's not necessarily an O-ring. And go ahead and run these screws home. Sorry for my hands being in the way of the camera. And this screw actually is kind of starting to strip out, so I have to be real careful going back with them. Use a flathead. This one's also starting to strip out. You can use that impact driver as well to kind of free these up. If they don't want to come, just give them a couple light taps with that impact driver. Should help to free them up. So you'll take this wire with this connector and it will connect straight onto that sensor just like that. You can kind of, it's hard to tell, but it gives you an idea. Everything's all there. Next, you're going to take your towel pat. This one I didn't wipe off very good. It's going to drop in there. Should sit about flat. You're going to take your sensor, slip it under here nice and gently. Try not to bend it. It goes on just like that. Upper top hat will go on, and you tighten your screw back down here. Again, being careful not to screw up that trigger wheel. Nice and tight. From there, you will go ahead and take your upper shield, drop it back in, and go ahead and replace those screws in this spot and this spot. Again, mine are stripped out and broken, so I will have to replace those off camera. That is a pretty easy way to rebuild a distributor. Takes about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, taking your time. Once you get everything apart once, if you ever have to do it again, pretty simple. Thank you. Hopefully this helps a few people out, saves a few bucks, because these factory distributors are excellent.